Page 28. Simplify cube roots. When simplifying numbers in cube roots, try to factor out the following: -1, 8, 27, 125, and 343. Keep trying to factor these out until none of these numbers can be factored out anymore. Simplify the radicals. Do not round. Show all steps. So let's look at some of these. Let's look at number 3, the cube root of 72. So we'll take our calculator and try to divide out those numbers. There's no negative inside, so we don't need to do -1. 72 divided by 8. We get 9. So we can rewrite this as 8 times 9. You can't divide out any more 8s, and 9 is smaller than 27, so we're done. We have the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 9. The cube root of 8 is 2. The cube root of 9 can't be reduced, so this is our simplified expression. 2 times the cube root of 9. Let's look at the next one, number 4. The cube root of -81. We have a negative, so we can factor out a -1. 81, if you try to divide it by 8, you get a decimal. But you can't divide out a 27. 81 divided by 27 is 3. So we have the cube root of -1 times the cube root of 27 times the cube root of 3. So we have -1 times 3 times cube root 3. For odd roots like a cube root, we won't have I, we'll have a regular -1. So your simplified expression is -3 times the cube root of 3. Let's look at number 5, the cube root of 48. So we'll take our calculator and try to divide out 8. It works. 6 times 8 is 48. So we have the cube root of 8 times 6. So we have the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 6. And that'll give you the simplified expression, 2 times the cube root of 6. On number 6, we have the cube root of 1024. So let's try to divide out 8 first. We have 128. Let's see if we can divide out another 8. We can, it's 16. We have 8 times 8 times 16. And we know that 16 is 8 times 2. So we have the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 2. That will give you 2 times 2 times 2 times cube root of 2. And that will give you the simplified expression, 8 cube root of 2. Number 8, the cube root of 135. So we use our calculator. There's no negative inside there, so we skip -1. It's an odd number, so we can't divide out 8. Let's try the next number, 27. It gives you 5. So 27 times 5. The cube root of 27 is 3, and the cube root of 5 can't be reduced any further. So that's your simplified expression. Try the rest of the questions on this page and then move on to the next page. Simplified cube roots, page 29. With simplified numbers and cube roots, try to factor out the following: -1, 8, 27, 125, and 343. Keep trying to factor these out until none of these numbers can be factored out anymore. With simplified variables and cube roots, divide the exponent of the variable by 3. The quotient is the exponent of the variable on the outside of the root, and the remainder is the exponent of the variable on the inside of the root. Simplify the radicals, do not round, show all steps. Let's look at number 3. We have the cube root of x to the 6th power. First, we want to rewrite this as a rational exponent, so it will be x to the 6 over 3 power. 6 divided by 3 is 2 with the remainder of 0. So your simplified expression is x to the 2nd power. Let's look at number 5, the cube root of n to the 5th power. We will first rewrite this as a rational exponent. We have n to the 5 over 3 power. Divide 5 by 3. 3 goes to the 5 one time. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract the 3 to get your remainder of 2. So your simplified expression is n to the 1st power times the cube root of n to the 2nd power. Number 7, the cube root of t to the 7th power. Rewrite it as a rational exponent. Use long division to find the quotient and remainder. 3 goes to the 7 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract the 6 to get a remainder of 1. So your simplified expression is t to the 2nd power times the cube root of t to the 1st power. Try the rest of these problems on your own, check your work, and then move on to the next page, page 30. Page 30, simplify cube roots. Let's look at number 4, 648, the cube root of 648. There's no negative, so let's go ahead and use our calculator and try to divide out 8 next. It gives you 81. So we can factor this out as 8 times 81. 81 can't divide by 8, so we're going to try to divide by the next number, 27. 27 times 3 is 81. So we have the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 27 times the cube root of 3. So we have 2 times 3 times cube root of 3. That gives you 6 times the cube root of 3. Let's look at number 5. The cube root of negative 250 x to the 11th power. The first thing you want to do is separate the number from the variable, simplify them, and then bring them back together. So we have negative 250. It has a negative, so we can factor out a negative 1. Okay, let's try the next number. 250 divided by 8. It gives you a decimal, so let's move on to the next number. 250 divided by 27. That gives you a decimal. We'll move on to the next number. 250 divided by the next perfect cube, 125. That gives you 2. So we have the cube root of 2 times the cube root of 125 times the cube root of negative 1. That gives you negative 1 times 5 times cube root of 2. So that would be negative 5 cube root 2. Now let's simplify the variable. First, we will rewrite as a rational exponent, x to the 11 over 3 power. Do long division. 3 goes into 11 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract. 11 minus 9 is 2. So we have a remainder of 2. So we have x to the third power times the cube root of x squared. Put them together and you get your simplified expression, negative 5 x cubed times the cube root of 2x squared. Try the rest of the questions on this page. Check your work. Move on to the next page. Page 31. Combine like terms with cube roots. Simplify first if needed. On number 2, let's go ahead and change the middle term. So scratch out the cube root of 72 and put cube root of 250. From there we want to simplify each of the cube roots. The cube root of 16 is the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 2. That's 2 cube root 2. The cube root of 250 would be 125 times 2. So that would be 5 times the cube root of 2. And then cube root of 8 is just 2. When we combine these together, 2 cube root 2 and 5 cube root 2 both have the same radical, so we can add those together. 5 plus 2 is 7. So we have 7 cube root 2 plus 2. And that would be our simplified expression. On number 3, scratch out the first term, that cube root of 24, and let's replace it with 5 cube root of 54. I'm replacing these numbers so that we will have a more simplified expression at the end. You can only combine the terms, and they're only like if they have the same number inside of that radical and the index of the radicals are the same. You can have like a cube root added with the square root, for example. So 54 is 27 times 2. So we rewrite this. We have 5 times 3 times cube root of 2. For cube root of 16, from before, it's cube root of 8 times cube root of 2. That's 2 cube root 2. So we're going to have 15 cube root 2 minus 2 cube root 2. And if we combine those together, we get 13 cube root of 2. And that's our simplified expression. Let's look at number 5. For the second term, let's go ahead and scratch that out and put 2 cube root of 384 instead. So 48 is 8 times 6, which that would be 2 cube root of 6. 384, we divide that by 8, you get 48. And then you can divide that again by 8 to get 6 times 8. So we have minus 2 times the cube root of 8 times 8 times 6. So if we rewrite this, we have 2 times the cube root of 6 minus 2 times 2 times 2 times the cube root of 6. These 2's are from the cube root of 8. So we have 2 cube root 6 minus 8 cube root 6. These are now like terms because they have the same radical, the cube root of 6. 2 minus 8 is negative 6. So our simplified expression is negative 6 times the cube root of 6. Okay, let's look at number 7. No changes are needed for this one. We have the cube root of 8 plus the square root of 16 plus the cube root of 64 minus the square root of 64. Now normally we couldn't combine these together because we have square roots and cube roots. Square roots have an index of 2. But these are all integers. The cube root of 8 is 2. The square root of 16 is 4. The cube root of 64 is 4. And the square root of 64 is 8. If you combine those together, you'll get 2. That's your simplified expression. Try the rest of these questions on your own on this page, and then move on to the next page. Page 32. Multiplied expressions with cube roots. Multiply each radical expression, then simplify. Show all steps. Let's look at number 4. We have negative 4 times the cube root of 16 times 4 times the cube root of 96. Before we multiply these all together, let's see if we can simplify these cube roots first. So the cube root of 16 is the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 2. And if you reduce that from the previous pages, you can see that that is 2 times the cube root of 2. And then we're going to multiply by 4, and then 96 is 8 times 12. And the cube root of 8 again is 2, and then we're left with the cube root of 12. So let's multiply these together. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. So negative 8 cube root 2 times 4 times 2 is 8 times the cube root of 12. So let's multiply the outsides together and the insides together. Negative 8 times 8 is negative 64. 2 times 12 is 24. 24 can be reduced. It's the same thing as the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 3. So we have negative 64 times 2 times the cube root of 3. Negative 64 times 2 is negative 128. So our simplified expression is negative 128 times the cube root of 3. And let's look at number 6. Negative 4 times the cube root of 3x squared times 6 times the cube root of 54x. 54 can be reduced. Into the cube root of 27 times the cube root of 2, and then we have an x left over. The cube root of 27 is 3, so we have negative 4 times 6 times 3 times what's left on the inside. The cube root of 6x to the third power. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 24. Negative 24 times 3 is negative 72. So we have negative 72 times the cube root of 6x cubed. Now, the cube root of x cubed is just x. So our simplified expression would be negative 72x times the cube root of 6. Try the rest of this page on your own, check your work, and then move on to the next section.